We've been starting these beginning with a discussion of the campaign, where things are, and I know it's early, it's only May. What's the defining issue in this campaign for governor?
The defining issue, I think, is how do we ensure long-term sustained economic growth and development, and how do we link up closing, or at least narrowing, the achievement gap in our public education system, K through 12, and in terms of public higher education, in a way that ensures that the talent pipeline will be filled long-term. As we sit here this morning, there are over 100,000 jobs that are posted by companies all over Massachusetts. And that number could be as many as 125,000 or more. Yet there are 237,000 people out of work, and probably a similar number who are underemployed, working no more than 20 hours a week. When I've traveled around the state and visited companies like Acme Packet, DataZoo, Vertex, and others, over and over again, the biggest concern that's expressed by business people, by business leaders, is, are we going to have a sufficient number of well-trained, well-educated people to serve our innovation economy? In this state, more than 40% of the people who work in our economy are in the innovation economy, the largest percentage of any state in the country. So for me, it's about closing the achievement gap, it's about access to education, it's about poverty in our neighborhoods, in our gateway communities, and it's about how do we create 75 to 100,000 new jobs over the next 5 years, each and every year, and how do we fill that pipeline and close that achievement gap, linking jobs, the economy, economic security, and education all up in one, because they are totally linked up together.
It's been almost 60 years since a constitutional officer in Massachusetts was elected governor. Why are you the candidate who can break that pattern?
Because I think I have my finger on the pulse of the most important issue that we face, which is jobs and economic security. I spent 35 years running a fourth-generation family business, creating jobs, building a great company by investing in the human capital that we had in our company. I ran for state treasurer in the worst times that we've seen in 75 years, 2009 and 2010, and thought about the whole issue of how can a leader in government, in this case state treasurer, how can a state government leader actually have an impact on job creation? Because most people would say the job of state treasurer is emphatically not one where you're in the job creation business. So as I listened to small business owners all over the state, I asked one question of business people during the campaign. I said, what are the roadblocks and barriers you face, and how can we in government help remove and lower those roadblocks? And they gave me a lot of answers, the most important of which was access to capital. So when I became treasurer and I asked the question, where are our state's reserve deposits? And I found that 60% of that money was sitting in banks in Europe, Australia, and Asia. I said, something's wrong with this picture. Massachusetts taxpayers' money should be in Massachusetts banks to be loaned to Massachusetts companies to create jobs right here. So we created this very simple program in which we deposit up to $10 million in any community bank. They have to insure the money. We loan the money with a focus on businesses owned by women, people of color, immigrants, and veterans, because let's be honest, those are always the people who have had a harder time getting access to capital. And what's the net result been? The net result has been 54 banks have received almost $400 billion and have, on their own, made over 8,000 loans with a value of over $1.3 billion. We're a catalyst for that. So why am I the best person to be governor? I'm the best person to be governor because I think the goal of this Commonwealth and our goal is to create one Commonwealth, to level the playing field, to leave no one behind. And it starts with jobs, economic opportunity, broadly and widely shared. And I think I've proven both in business and in my political life and as state treasurer that I understand the ingredients to create the kind of vibrant economy that leaves no one behind.
Let's come to your stewardship of the state treasury over the last 3.5 years. When you took office, the return on investment target of pension investments was, I think, 8.25%.
Right.
Now 8%. You've suggested, or at least talked about, moving it to 7.75%. Talk about that.
Well, let me correct that. When I became treasurer, the hurdle rate, the number that we needed to earn to meet our numbers was 8.25%. I thought that was too high. If you look at every other state around the country, you'll find that almost every state has been reducing that rate of return because they did not think they could earn an 8.25% return. The numbers used to be higher than that, even some were higher. So I recommended to my fellow colleagues in government, in the legislature, at the state pension board, I recommended that we lower that number. And a consensus emerged that moving it from 8.25% to 8% was the right number. What I've said is that I wouldn't rule out reducing that number if it turns out in the fullness of time that 8% is too high and that 7.75% is a better number. California, the biggest pension fund in the country, has a lower number. They're in the 7s. Then so be it. It did increase our unfunded pension liability by about $1.6 billion. But it was the right thing to do. And the interesting thing is, although it increased our unfunded pension liability, it actually was a credit positive with rating agencies, because the rating agency said, here's a state that is being more realistic about what it can earn on its pension assets. So even though we increased the unfunded liabilities, we actually have now achieved the second highest bond rating that you can achieve, which is AAA. We're AA+, and it's the highest bond rating the state's ever had. There are other reasons why our bond rating is AA+. Rainy day fund, better stewardship, fiscal discipline. But to me, living within your means and understanding what pension assets can do. Some people doubt that you can earn 8% on pension assets in this environment of virtually zero interest rates. But the fact is that over the last 5 years, over the last 10 years, and since the inception of the state pension fund, we have been able to earn that 8% number. We still have an unfunded pension liability of over $28 billion. And I give the legislature a lot of credit, and I worked with them on this, to dramatically increase the line item in the state budget this year, next year, meaning fiscal 15, fiscal 16, and fiscal 17 by 10% a year and 7% in the out years. That is going to allow us to fully fund our pension by 2036, which is 4 years shorter than it is legislated to be 2040.